Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Dave. Today I'm joined by Spike from Alternity Marketing. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. And extra brownie points to anybody who recognizes where Alternity is from.
There was an RPG Alternity,
Yeah.
so
Yes, exactly. Exactly. But hey, most folks these days don't realize that RPGs existed before, 5th edition
yeah, I
D&D.
feel like a few years back they rebooted the game.
They did. They did a second edition of Alternity, and nothing against the guys who did it, but I was not a fan, and they were also not able to get the rights to any of the settings, both of which were Origin Award-winning settings when they were released: Star Drive and Dark Matter, which is like an X-Files setting. It would be really popular now with all the spoopy Cthulhu stuff people are into.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when you're getting licensing, those kind of things are kind of important.
Yeah,
Like get and making sure you know everything that you're going to get out of it. I don't know. I
yes.
have very mixed feelings about licensing in
It,
general when it comes
it,
to RPGs. So,
yeah.
the quick elevator pitch and introduction for people who are not familiar with you.
Sure, sure. So, hi, I'm Spike Murphy Rose. I'm a marketer. I'm also a game designer and writer, which is weird, but I have been published a couple of times now, so I get to legitimately claim that. But I work not only in the game industry, but outside of it for everything from small businesses to multi-million-dollar corporations, helping them design e-commerce marketing campaigns using either like pay-per-click engines like Google, Bing, Yahoo, Facebook, etc., or doing competitive marketplace strategy and logistics like Amazon or Google Shopping and that kind of stuff. I also help people with planning marketing campaigns for Kickstarters and other crowdfunding platforms as well, like GoFundMe or stuff like that. I shouldn't
So,
say GoFundMe. I haven't done GoFundMe because that's more charity stuff.
yeah, what is the other one? The other one is pretty big. Necromancer Games puts a bunch over there. I can't think of it off the top of my head now for some reason. It's like the only other big one.
Indiegogo.
Indiegogo is another one. No, but I think there's a different one I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Well, there's a few at this point, and we
Yeah.
see
I also saw didn't one launch that was like specifically for tabletop RPGs?
probably. There's a lot out there now, and we see a lot
Yeah.
of the companies that do the kind of Kickstarter pledge processing are trying to diversify more and more, make themselves like an all-in-one platform for handling all your Kickstarter like logistics and the processing of orders, that kind of stuff. I would not be surprised if we see folks like GameFound trying to expand out into doing crowdfunding campaigns, much like Kickstarter. Or I think a good model to look at is Hasbro. The way Hasbro has been doing, they have their own, I don't even know if you want to call it a platform, but like they
Yeah.
re-released Hero Quest, and they did it as
Yeah.
a crowdfunding campaign. They've done this for a couple of things like, ridiculously huge Star Wars Lego sets and stuff like that. And so they're saying like, we will make exactly how many, like of as many of these as people are willing to buy, but we need you to commit to it first. And I think we're going to see companies like Cool Mini or Not and other companies that have had consistent success on Kickstarter, like there's an advantage to them to want to go to a platform where it's just, hey, we've got a campaign, do your pledge. We're not worried about all the marketing benefit that Kickstarter brings because we're so huge at this point. Like Cool Mini or Not, most of their backers on Kickstarter for any of their projects are not coming from new people that are just finding out about this from browsing Kickstarter. They're such a powerhouse in the industry. They have such reach with their marketing. Everyone knows when a new game comes out from them. Everybody knows if it's a game they're interested in. And so their audience is built in, and just you're just telling them where to go to pledge. They're not having to go build that new audience. Not that they aren't still doing that, but they could live without Kickstarter and just they could host their own platform if they wanted to. Whereas a lot of other companies that are reliant on that consistent Kickstarter like projects every quarter or every other quarter wouldn't be able to do without the free, well, it's not free marketing, but the marketing value that Kickstarter brings to the table.
Yeah, I mean when you get a backer on Kickstarter, every backer triggers like a series of events that has the potential to get you more backers.
Right.
And like, before we did our first Kickstarter, a lot of people said like, you'd be surprised, but like half the people that end up backing your project have never heard of you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a strong reason to go to Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I just wonder like at what size a company has to be where that no longer matters. It would be an interesting experiment if a bigger company tries it and then they find out one way or the other, you know, if that's true.
Yeah. Like we know if you're as big as Hasbro, it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's been, I can't think off the top of my head of other companies that have done that. I know there's been a couple, and there's like middling success, but it definitely, and it depends on how well the behind the scenes stuff is run too, because
Yeah.
every Kickstarter campaign is a series of layered illusions, and it's as important, more important for a Kickstarter to present the image of having a well organized, well thought out campaign where the product is essentially already done. We just need you to pledge so we can make it a reality. That's far more important than actually offering a good product or having put into work, or you know, a lot of what we think of as the legwork, because you're having to get people to back it and get on board first. The other thing is that we are not logical human beings as a whole. We all think that we are. Like, I'm sure that every single person watching this, with a few exceptions for those chaotic neutral folks out there, are thinking, I'm more logical than most of the people I know in my life. That can't be true. It absolutely can't be true. We can't all be the most logical person in the room. And we see that with our buying habits, with our eating habits, with everything that we do. We are emotional beings driven by emotion. And so Kickstarter is about, like, or any marketing campaign is about creating the necessary illusion for somebody to make the decision that you want them to.
It's all about the FOMO, man. FOMO.
Right. Oh, right. Ethical marketing means that you are trying to match customers with products, with a with a product, with a service that they will genuinely benefit from, that they do genuinely want. And then the trick is doing the things that they need mentally to give themselves permission to make that purchase, to go ahead with it, to feel like this is a good investment for me. And unethical marketing, of course, is just trying to get people to, like, buy it no matter what. Long ago, in my early days, I sold gym memberships, and
so you know what it's all about to do.
so
both.
I know exactly what it's about, and that was a huge issue.
Oh my god, it's like one of the worst, scummiest industries on the planet.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I also learned a lot about sales and marketing from there. Like, my one of the guys I looked up to, Ron, he's written books on, like, running gyms and on marketing and stuff.
Yeah.
And he was you know, he's one of those guys, because he's a bastard, but he's on your side. But his thing was, like, he's like, look, like, we're not trying to rip people off, but people need the pomp and circumstance. So, for instance, every weekend you have a sale. It doesn't, like, is there an actual sale? No, it doesn't matter. You're just telling people there's an event and they're participating. And then you tell them you're going to give them a special rate, and that special rate is whatever the normal rate is. And he literally said, like, whatever the normal rate is, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the posted rates are. You start high, you give them something low, and even if that's what the actual rate is, you have made them feel special and like they're getting a deal. And you know, these people had a lot of reasons why going to the gym would be good for them. Most of us know going to the gym would be good for us, and ultimately, like, you're going to be happier. You almost never leave the gym and think, like, oh yeah, I really regret going and having a good workout.
Yeah.
Like, so, you know, but at the same time, like, yeah, some people definitely can't afford it or don't need a 10 personal training session package or something like that. That's why I could get to be the number 2 salesman, but I could never be the number 1, because I wasn't willing to go that extra step and do whatever it took to close the sale.
I worked as a personal trainer for like 5 years. And like the number one thing to be a successful personal trainer is being able to sell.
Yep.
Has nothing to do with personal training.
Absolutely. It used to be like, I was always friends with the personal trainers at the gyms I worked at, because I was a competitive bodybuilder at the same time. And it was always weird too, because I'd have people asking me for advice while I'm working out, and then I'd point them to the personal trainers who are, you know, having them do like 5-pound flies on a freaking Bosu ball or something, which is appropriate for some people. But generally speaking, it was you know, the entire training routine that they had was built around getting people to continue to need training to work out. The reason they put you on balance balls isn't because that's a lot better for your core or for your workouts. In fact, it's worse for learning how to work out. The reason they do that is because if you learn to do every exercise on a fucking ball that you're having to balance on, you feel like you cannot exercise without a personal trainer. It's about building dependency, and that's why those corporate training programs are built the way they were. So yeah, difference between ethical marketing and unethical marketing is, and it is very gray area. You're having to try and recognize what that customer's need is. So bringing this back on topic, the Kickstarter I just got done working with was for a board game called Prosperity. About it's artisanal tea blending card game, board game. Very cool. 100% biodegradable, made with all recyclable materials. You could leave it out in the forest for a month and there'd be nothing left of it, so don't leave it in the outside, I guess.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah. Well, beautiful game, fun gameplay. And part of the goal was to show that you can make a product and make a profit on it that is also like environmentally friendly in the board game space. But we failed the first time we ran a Kickstarter. We did not meet funding goal. We came up well short. The second time around, we killed it. And that's the one that we just wrapped. And same product, same assets, same campaign in a lot of ways, but we did 3 times as well, almost 3 times as well we had the first time. And a lot of it came with how we manipulated the perception of the campaign. So the first thing that we changed was the goal. The initial goal the first time around was $20,000, which is not huge, but for a small indie board game, it can still be hard to get there. We didn't reach that goal the first time. I think we clocked in at like 12 or 14,000 by the end. And a lot of that was from like big donations at the last minute. But right off the bat, we were only able to get a fraction of the funding the first day. And that basically killed the momentum. We were never able to like get much after that. And we knew that was affecting our customers. When we lowered that goal to $5,000, even though realistically to do everything that we wanted to do, we needed to hit that $20,000 goal. We blew through it in a day. We got more money in the first day than we had in like the first 3 weeks of the previous campaign. And we clocked in at I think we topped like 30 something $1,000. We did like, we're more than but we did way, way better than we had even anticipated. That was kind of.
I have a question about that. What was the contingency plan if you're like mostly through your campaign and you're at 10 grand?
So we were going to have to pay for it out of pocket, basically. Like, I don't know the details of all of the like how deep the financials went there. I was working with them in the marketing capacity, so I wasn't able to be privy to everything. Yeah. But basically, like, we were going to get the game out no matter what. That would require an investment of some, personal funds from the creators, which they were willing to do. But it was something that was definitely like a concern. $38,000 is what we came in at finally. And so that is something that is more and more kind of like advice with planning a Kickstarter now, where you got to look at, like, for your goal, you want to set it as low as you can. Anything that you're going to, like, if you're planning on having money that you're going to invest in that, if you've got a nest egg, if you've got, a brother who's willing to put $2,000 into it or something like that, subtract all of that from your goal. Get it as low as you can, because again, it's about perception. It's about making people feel special, like they are part of something, and about maintaining that momentum. So Prosperity, same campaign, same product, same mailing list. But again, we like blew through our funding and we racked it up, and we like blew through our goals and did far better than we had been just by having that lower goal, because it created the impression right off the bat, like, hey, this funded and this is taking off, and there's this excitement behind it. And we were able to create that momentum and excitement at the beginning of the campaign. When you miss that opportunity, there's almost no recovering from it. There is, like, these days, if you launch a Kickstarter and you don't fund in your first 48 hours, you are probably not going to fund. you want to be at least 60% funding. And even then, like, you are going to have to hustle to try and like get over that finish line. And by lowering that threshold to being as low as you can possibly afford to produce a product, you can create that illusion that people need to feel like they want to back. Because here's something that, like, with Prosperity, the first time we had, of the like 2,400 or so, or 2,800 people that were watching the campaign on Kickstarter, like clicked the little heart, let me know when it's going to end, we got like 7% conversion. The second time around, we got closer to like 14%, I believe. And I know when I've worked with companies like Nord, they've come in closer to around like 30% at the end of that. But so you've got this giant chunk of people who looked at it, liked it, thought I like this, and then just don't back because there's something that's holding them back from pushing over the edge. They're almost there, but they click the button right next to the back your project. And so you're trying to, like, you got to create that whatever emotional catharsis or trigger they need to feel, to back it, and to feel like and to feel like they can back it, to give themselves permission to do that. If our first campaign, if everyone who said they liked the project and wanted to see it funded, if just everyone who left a comment had backed, it would have funded no problem. It would have done better than the second time around. But it didn't, because we had not given people that emotional, that mental cover that they need to say, hey, it's okay for me to spend my money on this, whatever that may be. And part of that went down to our lack of, the first time around, we didn't do any pre-marketing, and that will kill your campaign.
Yeah, I always wonder about that, right? Because we often get people that'll ask us about sponsorship and advertising. And like, personally, as someone that takes on those kind of brand deals, I really don't want them until I can send people to an actionable task, right? Like, I don't want their money to send them to put them on an email list.
Right.
Like, I want to be able to send them to the thing for them to make the decision.
Right. And that's what you want. A fundamental principle of marketing, no matter what you are doing, is minimizing the steps that the customer has to take from discovering your product to making the purchase. So you want to cut down on clicks, cut down on store visits, cut down on web pages. You want to make it as close to I see it, I buy it as you possibly can. Yeah. And so with Kickstarter, it's definitely the philosophy, like that pre-marketing work. Like when it comes to dealing with influencers like Nerdarchy, you reach out to them beforehand. You make sure to follow up, something which I know that when we were doing Prosperity, we certainly, like, we dropped the ball on, though we were doing a lot better our second time around with reaching out to influencers and gaming media sites, arranging ahead of time by a month or two, like, hey, we're going to do this Kickstarter, we want to do a thing, can you give us a shout out, can you put us in your newsletter, can we do an interview or whatever. We get
you have no idea how many we get, and it's like, you look and their Kickstarter is like halfway over, and it's like, oh, you want me to rescue your Kickstarter, right? And I'm like, I don't know, that's a lot of pressure, man, and also very short notice. So
yeah, and it's not gonna work, like, unless you're Matt Mercer in Critical Role, or Joe Manganiello or something like that. You can't save a Kickstarter with one shout out or one tweet. We were talking about this a little before the show started, but with influencers, it is very all or nothing. Either you're huge and you can, like, one word or tweet from you moves the industry, like, Elon Musk tweeting about like Bitcoin or whatever, or you're kind of like a drop in the pond. It's important to have constant coverage. Like the goal of going on streams, going on Nerdarchy, or your friends streaming D&D show or whatever, anything you can get on, is more about creating a sense to your audience of constant action, of constant movement, of constant coverage. Because like I have not only in my own capacity working with with some influencers, but also working with companies that have worked with influencers to try and get, like, through affiliate programs, you don't get a lot. Also, tracking traffic from like Twitch or YouTube, well, YouTube's better, but tracking traffic from streaming shows to websites for conversions is not a very good process, because a lot of times people are going their roundabout ways, or they're going after watching a rerun of the show or something like that. So finding that in the metrics is hard. Trying to find where your conversions actually are coming from streaming shows and being there is difficult to do. At the same time, if you cut back on that stuff, you start seeing a drop in all of your sales because you are getting less of that traffic. It's just hard to measure. But it's
Kickstarter makes that easier, at least for a lot of it, because you can do the custom referral links. And, like I know when we ran our Kickstarters, I must have made like 50 of them, and that morning, like after launching it, the first thing I did is send those all out. And, that tracks, direct conversion. So you know exactly what's going on as long as people use that link.
Yeah. Now there is, there's still a lot that's obscured by that. But that is, so if you are going to run a Kickstarter, if you want to be successful, set up all your tracking links. Make sure you have that all set up. You will not be able to set them up beforehand. So the morning your Kickstarter, which is stupid, but the morning your Kickstarter launches, you got to get those sent out, and you want to have a media kit that you send out to every single person you have talked to about promoting your Kickstarter. And you give them assets, you give them copy that they can use if they want. Though it's best with any kind of influencer, with any kind of shout out, let them do it in their own words, let them incorporate it into their shout they're going to want. You just give them the tools that they might need, and you give them that custom link with the tracking, because you need that tracking. Kickstarter is designed so that while you can get some tracking through, say, Google Analytics, they specifically do not let you get e-commerce tracking. So you are forced to have to go through Kickstarter for that data. I don't fully trust their conversion data. Like as far as the attribution, I think the conversions are all real, but I think that a common tactic in my industry, especially from marketing agencies, is to manipulate the attribution of sales. So that means that essentially, like, attribution is figuring out why did somebody buy something? What was it that made them go? Was it seeing this ad? Was it clicking on this link? Was it this video they saw on YouTube? Why did they buy? So attribution looks at that and looks at everything that a customer has done, usually for the past 30 days, but up to 90 days in Google or Facebook or anything else. And it will give a value and say, like, okay, well, this is the last thing they clicked. Well, so that's why they did this. Well, there's a lot of different models that you use. Google lets you choose your model. Kickstarter does not. A lot of them will do last click, or a lot of them will do like what marketing agencies will do, especially ones that have their own proprietary software, is that they will have conversion models where if any of their ads were or assets were interacted with at any point on the customer journey, then they will take credit for that. And they will list that as conversions and revenue that they brought you, even though really it was the fact that they clicked on, the email link that you sent out through your email campaign or something. Right. When I worked with Nord Games, we had to deal with this with a company that was I discovered they were manipulating their tracking because I was looking over the numbers. It was like, hey, the total sales and conversions they have listed for this month is greater than the total sales revenue that we had for the entire company across all channels for the month. Like
something doesn't compute.
Like, that can't be correct. And when I looked into it, it turned out they were cannibalizing the campaigns that I was running for Nord Games through Google and a couple other places. And they were counting all of those as their conversions. And we were able to show that. And they straight up admit, like, oh, yes, that's what this does. I was like, well, if we're going to keep using your services, your software can't be doing that, because you're telling us you have a 10-to-1 ROI, that for every dollar we spent, we're getting $10 back. When it turned out for every dollar we spent, we were losing $5. And so attribution is super important, kids. Track where your customers are coming from. Double check that stuff. If you've got Kickstarter, also have your Google Analytics. Make sure that you compare that stuff. But also you want to have all your tracking set up, because that's how you know what's working and what's not. Because that can kill a lot of campaigns.
That's like all really important and like high level stuff. But like for someone just getting in and they want to run a Kickstarter, what kind of advice would you give them to get started?
Okay, so if you want to get started on a Kickstarter, have your product mostly done. You like, so first off, by the time you launch, like you should have the manuscript should be mostly written, or you should have a draft. The board game should have a prototype. Like you want to have a lot of that work done already, because delays kill Kickstarters and they kill your ability to do future Kickstarters. Plus, people, it gives you more assets and material to show off to people, and that's how you're going to sell people on it, especially these days, because there's a lot of competition. Invest in good art. Doesn't matter what you're doing, you need good art. Some Kickstarters can carry themselves on the merit of their ideas without good art, but that's not most of them. Your Kickstarter intro video and the art that you have on your Kickstarter page is going to have a far bigger impact on your campaign, frankly, than whether the product is well designed. I wish that wasn't the case, but that's how human beings work. And then I think the big thing, plan your marketing out ahead of time, like at least 6 weeks ahead of time. You want to have get assets ready for stuff that you're going to post on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. Have that ready to go before launch. If you're going to work with influencers, if you're going to get interviewed by Nerdarchy, if you're going to be on somebody's stream, whatever, book as many of those for your Kickstarter period as you can beforehand. Gather email lists, and that is huge. Like if you're going to run a Kickstarter, then you do need to start gathering emails, or have an email list that you can rely on already. Like if you're doing it through a publisher or a company or something like that. But more than anything else for making or breaking a Kickstarter, the prep is what's going to make the difference. If you just launch a Kickstarter, even if it's a great product, without any prep, without any pre-marketing announcements, even if it's as simple as an email going out a couple days beforehand saying, hey, I'm doing a thing, you are setting yourself up for failure. I have a friend who is running a Kickstarter right now, and that's exactly what happened. He has an amazing product. It is super cool. It is super affordable. He has a massive channel and audience on YouTube and other online presences, one of the biggest D&D YouTube video producers out there, but he had no pre-marketing for his campaign. It has a high goal that he set out of 100K from the get-go over a long campaign, and there was no marketing plan set up to with other influencers, with other channels, with buying ads on Facebook or stuff like that. And so, it did well, surprisingly well, for all of that, taking all that into consideration, but it's not going to fund. And it's hit that point of the campaign where it was gaining money, but it never hit the halfway point. And then it started to lose money. And, there's so many tools that are available there for that campaign to succeed, but because they weren't utilized beforehand, it's too late. And there's no, for a campaign like that, it's long enough and the person has enough reach that with an intense amount of hustle, they could maybe pull it off. But at this point, they would be better off waiting a couple months until the next quarter, relaunching the campaign with a better plan and with the marketing set in place beforehand, so that they can make it succeed. Because as it was, it was doomed at launch, because that prep work hadn't been done. With Prosperity, it was the same thing. When I got brought on for the first campaign, it was literally hey, we want you to do the marketing for this. Great, I can do that. Campaign launches tomorrow. Well, crap. And we tried our best, but we were not able to get there. Same campaign, same product, same assets, but we started booking things, and we made all the posts for Facebook. Everything's going to be just we had daily trivia posts. All that crap we did 6 weeks out, so that all we had to focus on during the campaign was what's coming up right now. We've got someone who wants to do an interview or something, or we've got this response on here, or we're just going to focus on the updates. So all of the day-to-day, busy work type of posts were already taken care of, so we could just focus on responding to things as they came up during the campaign. Because if you think that you're going to get assets done during the campaign, if you think that you're going to be able to finish all this work during the campaign, you're lying to yourself, because something always comes up. Something always goes sideways. There's always some other opportunity. And then you find yourself having to choose between this other opportunity and the work that you already know needs to get done but hasn't been gotten done yet. And I've seen that happen on countless campaigns, whether that I've been involved with or ones that like friends of mine or clients of mine have been running. And inevitably it occurs. I mean, even with the prosperity, we didn't have all the assets done, and there were some assets that never got done because we were having to get them done during the campaign. It's always like, well, like, do we get this asset done, or do we go do this like live stream demonstration of the game that we already had planned? And so we had to, it worked, it all worked out, but, and we had a lot of assets already, but,
yeah, the pick and choose.
Yeah. But there was stuff that we wanted to do, that we talked about, that we never got to do, even though every day is like, okay, we're going to get to this next. This will be the next thing we do. But there just wasn't the time, because you are just scrambling during the campaign. So it's kind of like running a D&D campaign. You want to try, you're going to have to improvise. So you get as much of the stuff that you can know, that you can have laid out, have your battle map, have your minis, have your monster stats all ready to go, because you don't want to have to be worrying about that while also juggling whatever craziness the players have come up with. And it's the same thing with a marketing campaign. Your audience yeah.
So I was just going to say, between the first campaign and the second one, are there any other things you did differently other than lowering the goal?
So I mean, we lowered the goal. We had most of our posts scheduled out ahead of time. We reached out to gaming media sites weeks and months in advance, and did everything we could to book articles and appearances or shout outs or anything that we can. The other big thing is that between the first campaign and the second, we kept the marketing going. It's another thing that you see a lot with companies is they'll run a big Kickstarter. They have this big marketing push, and then it's just crickets. They drop off the map, and you don't hear about them again until they're trying to start the engine up again for the next Kickstarter. Sometimes that works, but sometimes it's like starting a car in the middle of winter. You gotta, like, the engine doesn't start, it doesn't kick over or doesn't turn over. You gotta like, goose it a couple of times, and you don't want to have to do that. So this time, after the campaign ended, we kept the marketing going, and we kept building the email list. That was the big thing. We kept the page up. We continued to have posts going on social media, though we dialed them back, and we were pointing everybody toward the landing page of the website, where it's like, sign up to be notified when Prosperity launches again. We did the same thing through updates for our Kickstarter, and we reached out to anyone we could to see about getting a shout out on their email list, because email has a better conversion than anything else. Like, if you could only have one marketing source for a campaign, I don't care what you're selling, email is what you want.
Is email still better than SMS?
I think email is better than SMS, because email, you're more likely to, like, it's easier to click through an email to going to like pledging or converting something. SMS works too, but also email is less intrusive than SMS is. And that's something, like, getting back to the psychology of customers. You send somebody a text, like, some people are just gonna, like, just naturally just like, who are you? Like, who are you texting me?
Why
like,
are you texting me? Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And for anyone that doesn't know what SMS is, that's just like the technical term for text messaging.
Yeah. But I think email is huge. So we continued to cultivate that email list, and we kept the momentum going. And so that way, when we went into the next campaign, we weren't having to start up all the excitement again. It was still there. We still had a bunch of people on the hook who wanted from the first Prosperity campaign. And then we were able to reach a bunch of new people, both through our own email list that we had built up and done email harvesting for. Email harvesting means, like, when you ask people to give you their email. So for us, we just did a website.
Nothing shady.
Yeah, nothing shady. Though, like, a great example, Apotheosis Studios, run by Jameson Stone, for their Sirens Kickstarter they just did with his wife Satine, they did an email harvesting campaign through social media where they shared some of the beautiful art that they'd already developed, because they had their assets ready beforehand. And for months leading up to it, they had these ads running where you could sign up for their email list and you got a bunch of free art, or you got like a free little PDF of some aspect of the game, of the setting that was going to come out. And so they gave you something like, hey, sign up for our email list and we'll give you this sneak preview or this little taste of what's going to come. And so by the time they launched, they had a very large email list built up, much larger than what they'd had for their first project, the Red Opera. But they were able like to build off of that. They also were doing this at the same time that the Red Opera was starting to ship out, which is another like smart thing to do. You can't do it as a new Kickstarter person, but again, like continuing that momentum.
Yeah.
Oh, we just finished this project. Hey, here's the new one. Here's the next one. And
What for someone that's like kind of just getting started, maybe they're starting at zero, they haven't done a Kickstarter before. What's a good goal for a starting email list? I mean, obviously, as many as possible, but that's not
Right.
really.
You want to have, you want to have a few hundred people at least. Like if you're starting out, if you're small time, like if you have an email list that has a few hundred people on it and you're doing a Kickstarter for your PDF / print on demand product or something like that, that's got a goal of a couple grand, that's a great start. And then if it's going to be a hardback print product, if it's going to be bigger, if you're wanting to put out like a real supplement third-party hardbound book, then you probably want a couple thousand on there at least. I'd say probably at least 1,500 on that list. I'm really just pulling that out of my butt, but like that's roughly what you want to look at. To put things in perspective, Google will not let you advertise on an audience list. Like you can't use it when it's less than 1,000 people because it's just not enough for them to be able to use.
Yeah, there's not enough of a sample.
That's another thing. Email lists can allow you to do more refined targeting. So if that's something you want to get into, you can use those audience lists, those emails, you can upload those to Google or whatever, and you can make sure either that those people see certain ads, or you can make sure that those people do not see your ads that are like aimed at new customers. That's more advanced stuff.
Do you recommend people use the email list through Kickstarter or go out and get their own?
Get your own. You absolutely want to get your own. Use Kickstarter's emails. You want to use both, but you need your own email list. You want your own email list that you cultivate, that you own, that you have, and then you use that to inform your customers. You also get them signed up through Kickstarter, and you want to give people information through there. But when your Kickstarter ends, you're going to need that email list for a future product. I'm going to disappear off screen for a second because I have to shoo a kitten out of here. Okay.
The cat is not respecting your Kickstarter knowledge at all.
And when you're starting out, if you're a new publisher or something like that, reach out to friends. Reach out to, not to say back my Kickstarter, though you want to do that too. But find somebody who has a bigger email list than you. So Prosperity built up their email list and they did great with that. And we got a lot of traction, but also because I used to work with Nord Games and I'm still friendly with them, I reached out to them. It's like, hey, can you give us a shout out on your email list? And we saw a definite bump from that. And while in some cases, like, we had smaller streams as well. Like I'm friends with the folks at Quest and Chaos, a local D&D stream in the Bay Area here. And we got some shout outs from them. We didn't get a lot of traffic from them, but you know what? For like just a couple free giveaways of some tea on their show, we got like about a dozen backers out of that. And that all makes a difference. That all moves the needle. That all gets you closer to that.
That's sweet catnip tea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And but yeah, so reaching out to other people that have larger email lists can be a big way to help you out early on when you're getting started. And a lot of folks, a lot of companies are willing to do that. Especially if you can do like a little bit of a quid pro quo or something like, hey, I will give you guys a shout out, or when you're doing a project next, like we'll let people know through our email list. But that can be an incredibly valuable asset if you have any intention of staying in the gaming industry, really being in business for yourself, selling a product. You want to cultivate an email list, and you want to keep it going and not just have it be active when you have projects going. Even if it's a once a month update, you want to reach out to your customers, remind them you exist, make them have to see that email in their inbox or their promotions folder or whatever. But just to remind you that you're there, because eventually there's going to be something that grabs their eye.
Network, make friends, and also be of service to others, right? Like,
Yeah.
That's a super important thing that I think sometimes people kind of gloss over or forget. Like, you can't just be gimme, 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 and all about yourself. You
Right.
you have to reciprocate wherever you can.
A rising tide does lift all ships, but it's huge. And we were talking about this before, but touching back on Apotheosis Studios and Satine Phoenix's project with them Sirens, we were talking about this, how she's never really used her celebrity within the community toward like a marketing purpose before. She has her Gilding Light channel, which they have a couple shows and it started to come back to life recently, but has never really is one of those people who has not put themselves and their presence, their capital within the community behind a product until now. And even though they didn't have, like, there were certainly other things that they could have done, that might have arguably made the campaign even more successful. They had a hugely successful campaign. They were able to do much better than the last one they had done. Their first campaign came in at about, I think, 200K, and this one broke 300K. And a big part of that was that while Satine had not put a lot of marketing, had not put directed effort toward turning her own brand into like a big marketing engine, she knew a lot of people. She has a lot of friends. She has a lot of goodwill in the industry, and was very easily able to reach out to people. So like, hey, she has helped promote other people's stuff for years, and so was able to do exchanges for shout outs or be able to get people involved, or just saying, hey, can you contribute something to the project or to the book? Just by having those names attached, was able to get more and more people involved in pledging. And so we saw that while they didn't have the kind of like all-out marketing campaign that something like Ouroboros, the big $1.2 million campaign that just finished on Kickstarter, did, they were still able to do incredibly well, using a relatively small amount of resources and marketing channels, but just being highly effective with how they were doing that, particularly with using influencers. And it was more about, not about, oh, we had this person say this thing about us and then we immediately got 20 backings, but it was just this constant flow of different people in the industry and who were creating greater awareness of this project and getting it out to their audiences, and creating this sense that there was a constant momentum throughout the campaign leading up until the final day, which is why their final day project was Satine running a 14-hour session for 7 different groups of 6 players each or something, which is crazy, but also like capped off the momentum they had been building and building and building through their campaign, so that you see their funding just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. Whereas most Kickstarter campaigns, you're going to get a big old U shape going on there, like right in the middle. There's certainly a slowdown that happened there, but they were able to keep that momentum going just because there was always something happening. Like literally every day, there was some kind of a stream through Gilding Light, or that Satine was sponsoring, that was, talking about the project, or she or Jameson was on someone else's stream every day talking about the project. It was just wall-to-wall coverage, even though they didn't have the, $10,000, $20,000, whatever marketing campaign that someone like Ouroboros with a huge backing behind it was able to.
That wow money, man.
Exactly, that wow money. And you see too, that audience there, they cashed in on hey, Blizzard, we have a good relationship, we need a favor.
Yeah.
And boy, did that pay off. Or Critical Role is like that too. Critical Role is one of the few influencers out there where one mention can make or break your campaign, or I should say can make your campaign even if it's not doing well otherwise. But there's few influencers that are that big, and that's also why Critical Role charges $25,000 for a single shout out. So
I know, with our Kickstarter, I delayed most of our marketing. I didn't want it to start until week 2 and run throughout. I was looking more. I just had a theory that if I could consistently pump it, the marketing throughout the campaign instead of front loading it all, that it would continue to drive like the Kickstarter algorithm. And and also, I mean, we've been doing Nardarchy at that point for 5 years. So,
Right.
the things that I did in the beginning of the campaign for the marketing was mostly like us and just calling in some favors and asking for shout outs, but our actual like marketing with influencers, you know, I put towards the end of the campaign, in the middle of the
Right.
campaign, and it worked out really well because we never really saw a slump. Like we saw like a 3-day slump, and by slump I mean like we didn't get at least 100 backers,
Right.
on those days.
Yeah. Well, you guys had a very well established audience. So that was like huge. And that is something like companies after a certain point, you do get an established audience. That's why continuing that momentum, keeping communications going, continuing email communication, if you don't have anything else, is important. You guys have shows, you have your email, you have your website. When I was working with Nord, their main interaction with their audience, with their customers, is usually through email updates. The Discord is variably active at different times, but mostly it's email updates that are telling Nord customers like what's going on. And they know that anytime they release a new 5e product now, they have a pretty reliable base of backers that they can rely on, that are going to pick up anything 5e that they put out. And when you get to that point as a company, that can be very good. The trick is turning that into a non-Kickstarter audience, turning that into regular sales that can sustain a company without having to run quarterly or biannual Kickstarter campaigns to be able to sustain it. Because it's very easy for anyone to fall into the cycle of having to run project after project after project. And you realize, like, I can't keep the lights on if I don't have a new project that goes, that's going to partially subsidize like the project we're finishing now. And then, trying to get ahead of that curve there, it can be really difficult. And that's where not getting lax with your audience building is so important, because if you want to be able to evolve beyond Kickstarter as a company, as a creator, then you need to have an audience. You need to cultivate your audience to the point where it can sustain you without an active campaign going at that time.
Do you have suggestions for keeping like an email list engaged so that like they don't drop off between projects?
I mean, yeah, you talk about always talk about what you're doing in upcoming projects. Insight into what you're working on is great. Asking questions of folks or asking for interaction can be good. Frankly, give stuff away. If you have an ability to do so, say like, hey, we do a giveaway through this stream, or we're doing a give like one of the Gleam.io, any of those sweeps, any of those giveaways where you take all the action, where you take, like us on Facebook, share us, like us on Twitter, and each one gets you an entry, and then you can win a bundle of stuff. Doing those every once in a while can be incredibly effective. Those are almost always a great ROI. Even if you don't see direct sales measured from that, running those like once a quarter keeps your audience engaged, and you will see like it does boost sales. So any kind of like contests or giveaways like that, but just have stuff to talk about. Keep it new and fresh. Show them a new image if it's come out, like anything that's going to grab their eye. I love the Trudvang property, which is a very popular RPG out of Sweden that's just been breaking into the English-speaking market now. And one of the things they do is they do regular updates and emails where it's just short stories set in their world that, like, if it's not an update this week about how the board game is coming or the newest book or a piece of art, like, here's a short story set in the world, and then they give you a quick update like, we're still waiting for shipping news or something.
Yeah, I follow Gary Vaynerchuk, a fellow Jersey boy.
Oh yeah.
And he wrote a book a while back called Jab 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 Right Hook, and with the premise is like you offer value, and then you try and sell something.
Right.
And so like we do a weekly newsletter, and every week there's just basically free content in there. And it might be like updates to what's going on with what we're doing. We run contests through the newsletter as well, where we just randomly pick someone that's a newsletter subscriber and give them like $50 to $300 worth of stuff that's, RPG related.
Yeah.
So there's definitely ways you can do it if you don't have a budget, right? It may
Yeah.
require some time, and you do some content creation. You mentioned writing stories and setting that world, things that just keep people engaged. But because in my experience and from what I've read is that, like, if you don't keep your list engaged, they'll stop opening your emails.
Exactly. You give them a reason to check.
Yeah, it can't be just like, oh, look, Nerdarchy wants to sell me something again.
Right. Right. And that's exactly right. You need to be offering value so that then when you make that ask, I mean, frankly, like, then people feel like, oh, I'm already involved. Like, they've already, so if like they've gotten value from being on your email list, like, oh, I got that PDF of that subclass or whatever that I used, or they linked me to that blog that had super useful information or whatever. Suddenly you feel like, well, I owe them a little. Like, I owe them to at least look at their sales pitch. And that's kind of where you're trying to, like, you want the customer to be open to that. So you don't want to be constantly making a sales pitch. You want to be offering that. So you, like, that's a much simpler way of what I was trying to say. Offer them value. Content is king. With Nord, one of the things they advocated for a long time, they started doing this. They do a weekly live stream now too, where they just talk with their designers and writers and stuff about what they're working on or different concepts and stuff. JVC Perry, who's one of my favorite independent game designers out there. You can find his stuff all over DM's Guild. He started writing for Nord and has been writing for Loresmith for a while as well. But he does a newsletter, and he just spend a few paragraphs talking about design philosophy, or this is what I was working on this week, but a lot of it is oriented toward, like, designing an adventure or the process of going through and editing one or something like that. He's trying to give you content that is, he's hoping you'll find interesting. And even if I'm like, you know what, I don't need to know about that, I at least think to check and look at it. And then when I do see, oh, hey, this email is actually mentioning something about a new project or something, okay, I'll see what it's about at least. And because they've built that relationship.
Yeah, unfortunately people forget, you have all these avenues where we can use them to connect with our customers, our fans, our audiences, and they forget to connect with them. Instead, they just want to try and sell things. Like, Think Geek, when that was still a thing, like, they had a great YouTube channel. They had, like, all the money behind them, but, like, their YouTube content wasn't good. Their personalities were great, but like, they had this mindset that they had to, like, talk about and show things that they were selling through Think Geek. And, like, they had their comments disabled because they're tired of seeing people go, I can get that cheaper on Amazon. And I was just like, look, if you stop talking about your products and just entertain people and meet people, you won't have to worry about people doing that in your comments.
Right. Because people are fundamentally emotional buyers.
You got to build a relationship with them.
Exactly. And then that gets back, like, what I'm talking about, like, what I learned selling gym memberships. Like, is there a sale? Yes, there's always a sale. If you ask me if there's a sale, I don't care what it's talking about, there's a sale. And the reason is because I need to make you feel special. And that's what people want. They want to feel like they have a relationship. They want to feel like they're part of the in crowd. They want to feel like there's some type of tie with them and the brand, and that they're not just a faceless consumer who's forgotten about the moment that the company gets their money, which may or may not be true. There's plenty of great companies out there that really care about their customers and stuff, and there's plenty that don't give a damn. But everyone wants to feel that way. Like, local game stores. Like, I have relationships with a number of local game stores here, and pretty much every game store that I have, like, lived in the area of that I patronize, after a certain amount of time, I end up getting a 10% discount. Because I do favors for the store, because I'm a regular customer, because I'll, boost their stuff online on social media. But it's a, acknowledgement of the, relationship that I have tried to build with them, and they have tried to build with me, and they acknowledge that. And to them, they're just eating the sales tax, but they're getting my sale instead of it going to Amazon or something like that. And I know, like, this is a minor difference. This is literally like, I'm paying $1 less for this product, but I could be paying $10 less on Amazon. But in my brain, that's
Yeah.
enough. Like, that's like, hey, you're not charging me full price. You're willing to show that my relationship has value to you, even if you can't offer me the same deal that Amazon can. And so I know that they care about me, and Amazon definitely does not. Like, that's enough for me to like want to make that purchase, or to justify saying like, you know what, it's worth it for me to spend the extra money on this, because on top of it being good to support your local game store and all that kind of stuff, but you know, psychologically, that relationship is what like fosters that, and it's making you feel like you matter to them rather than just all that matters is your money in your wallet. And it doesn't matter how true that is. It's just about how true you can make people feel that that is. You can care immensely about your customers. You can be bending over backwards. You can be giving them the absolute best deal that you can. My buddy with the failing Kickstarter, that's definitely the case. He gave the absolute best offer he could. He cares so much about his audience. He cares so much about them. He's like, I'm not going to barrage you guys with all this marketing BS or whatever. And was just, but unfortunately was relying too much on just that goodwill. You know,
It's
because
what I call the field of dreams approach, which I don't recommend.
right, you know, if you build it, they will come. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
You need to make them feel extra special. Like, you know, this friend runs a Discord where if you're a paid member of his like channels, you can get to talk with him. Like, I don't talk to him through that. I am a paid member and stuff, but I don't talk to him through that. I harass him through Facebook and, you know, and that stuff. And it makes me feel special because it's like, I talked, like, even though frankly, I'm not any more special than a lot of other people doing this stuff. You know, but because of the illusion that that creates of, you know, oh, I'm getting something a little bit different, a little bit outside the norm, you know, even if it's that 5% discount, or I get to talk to you without it have like through a different channel. It creates that illusion or that perception of a relationship, and that's what people want.
Make them feel a part of it, make them feel special, make them feel like
Right.
that thing, you know, is bigger than it is.
Oh yeah, and FOMO is real, you know. So like, I mean, hell, like Satine and Jameson's Kickstarter Sirens, I'm probably never gonna run that campaign. It looks super cool. I really love it. But man, I have so many game books on my shelves that I'm never going to get to run campaigns that, like, you know, and I run 6 freaking games. It's not like I'm slacking here, but yeah, but you know what? I backed it because it was, you know, I'm friends with Jameson. I like Satine. I like what the company is doing, and they have relationships with people that I also know and like, or, you know, and they're creating opportunities for people I like. So to me, I backed that project mostly because of the relationships that I felt like I had with people involved or with the property or the company. And it was less about, oh, this is something that I super duper need. Whereas my buddy's project that is failing, I freaking need his products. They are great. You know, one of them, if he'd hit the stretch goals, was a silicone DM screen that attaches to your laptop that turns it into a DM screen that you can also write on and write over. That's super cool. A lot of people would love to have that, but you know, he was relying on the Field of Dreams methodology and didn't go out there to like make people feel extra special to build it up and doing that marketing prep to kind of create that momentum. And so you had no momentum, and you had everyone feeling like part of the mob instead of feeling like, oh, we're special because we're part of this group or this group. And, you know, he has not been able to hit that goal.
There's a there's a question in the chat here from Brian. How can I apply your marketing skills to convincing my players a new NPC won't stab them in the back? Of course, ultimately, to stab them in the back dramatically.
Okay. Yeah, so players are inherently distrustful of anybody who is nice to them. You know, sort of like characters in a Zack Snyder movie. But you want to have them do things for the players that help them, and more importantly, they need to create the impression that their interests are aligned with the players. The players have to think like, well, there's no reason this person has no possible motivation for wanting to betray us, or even more so is that they are as invested in this common goal as we are. When you create that illusion, then that like worked right. Also, choose a like fun, like choose a friendly or silly voice. For my Tyranny of Dragons campaign that I ran for a little over 2 years, one of the main NPCs in that campaign throughout was one of the player characters' brothers, Sven. But they all had a little bit of a southern drawl, and he was always super excited to see his sister Sifa. And oh, I'm so happy you're here, Sifa. It's so great to see you. That's terrible what happened with all those dragon cultists. He was one of the worm speakers of the Cult of the Dragon. He had been working with them, he had been paid off, and they like saw it all in like, hindsight, like, oh my God, like he's been motivated by greed, and basically they made him an offer he couldn't refuse, and that kind of stuff. And it ended with him getting beheaded. It was not so the party could get an ally they needed to fight the Cult of the Dragon. It was pretty bad, but they did not see it coming at all. And a big part of it was just that like they thought his interests were aligned with theirs. And he was this silly, fun, happy character who consistently, like every time I had a downbeat in the campaign, like, oh, it's a meeting with the High Council and everyone's all super dour and upset and blah, blah, blah. And then right afterwards, like, don't worry, Sifa, I got your back here. I'll help y'all out. Like, and he did help the party out a couple of times, but that was all so that he could get in and be able to feed information to the rest of the cult. And so you just, make them seem helpful, make them seem super friendly. Your characterization will say so much about it. And then they'll be horrified.
Perfect. So with that, we were at the hour mark. Final thoughts before we head on out?
Build your email list. Do your prep at least 6 weeks before you actually launch your Kickstarter. And make sure to set your goal as low as you can get away with at the start of your Kickstarter to create momentum. And I guess the biggest thing is engage with your potential customers, with your audience. Even if you're not running something, even if you don't need anything from them, engage with them and try to create value. Always think about, like, why would anyone want to give me the time of day? Give them a reason.
Yeah. I mean, I would add to that, just remember, like, whatever medium you're using to connect with people, just remember there's people on the other side of that.
Right. Exactly. It is always people. And
well, thanks. Thanks, Spike, for coming on. Really appreciate it. The links, as always, down in the description. And until next time, stay nerdy.
Thanks, everyone.